we go. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Master Your Life with Kate McKay. I am thrilled to introduce, drumroll, Nick Hutchison. Welcome, Nick.
I'm excited to be here. There's no place I'd rather be. I love providing value, telling my story, and interacting with cool people like you.
And you love books. That's the
I love
best
books.
part. I love that about you, especially a person that's younger. Just a little bit about your amazing bio, because I think that, gosh, when people know all the things that you've done, it's going to be pretty impressive. So, Nick stands as a visionary force behind BookThinkers, his company BookThinkers, a growing seven-figure marketing agency that seamlessly bridges the worlds of authors and readers. In just over 7 years, he has organically built a platform that reaches over 1 million people each month. Nick's podcast, BookThinkers, Life-Changing Books, is a globally top 2% show that features captivating interviews with world-class authors such as Grant Cardone, Lewis Howe, and Alex Hormozi. And also, just as a side note, I met Nick through our mutual contributions and part of a great company called Brand Builders. And Nick's got a pretty integral part in growing in that part of the company with his expertise in book publishing, creating books, and creating powerful stories. So that's just a little synopsis, and there's so much more. So pretty cool, Nick. So Nick, tell
Yeah,
me what.
sounds better when
Tell
you
me.
read it.
Yeah, I know. It's always like, oh my gosh, should I be puffing my hair? Flexing my muscles? It's such a weird thing, right? All right. So, Nick, tell me, because like the bottom line is I was a freak about reading books to my kids and their readers, but you're a younger guy and it must be like a barren landscape, I would think, in your demographic about people who actually read, maybe in your general, like who you grew up with, maybe not in your work life. But tell me, what was your evolution into being a reader and a writer?
Well, I'll tell you what, credit to my parents. When I was really young, my dad and my mom, they would read to us. I'm the oldest of four boys, so they would read to us and tell stories every night before we were going to bed. But that sort of disappeared for me when I got into middle school, high school, where I was trying to be cool, right? I played more of the athlete stereotype, not really the academic. And so I was the kid that was always capable of doing the work, but sort of chose not to. For example, I took AP calculus, but I had a 0% homework average, right? That was sort of my story. And I really stopped reading. I stopped reading because I was scared of what other people thought of me. I didn't want to mispronounce something and have everybody laugh in class. So I shied away from presentations and sort of like the speaking side of things as far as high school goes. And most of that behavior followed me through college as well. I was in the dining hall a lot, in the gym, playing basketball, having fun, not really paying attention in school. But everything changed for me when I took an internship at a local software company going into my senior year of college because my boss, Kyle, introduced me to the world of podcasts. And so I started listening to shows where successful people were being interviewed and talking all about what they had done to become successful to and from that internship. And what I realized very quickly was that so many of these people gave at least some credit for their success to the books that they were reading. And many of them had written books themselves. So I just had this like aha moment commuting to and from this internship that summer that if I was choosing not to read books because it wasn't cool, then I was also choosing to live under my potential. And now that might sound funny, Kate, for you and me, because like we're so in this world of personal development. We've both written books. We're part of companies like Brand Builders Group, but the average Joe is not into this stuff, which still blows my mind now that I'm on
It's
the other side.
90%, dude. And Brandon Bouchard says it's actually like 95. I'm like, don't bum me out. But I
Yeah.
mean, literally, it's 90% of the population doesn't do psychological or spiritual work on a daily basis. So when you think that you don't have reach, any of you in personal development, understand that you have quite the reach and people to impact.
Yeah, anytime I'm flying down the highway and there's traffic on the other side and you're passing like 20 cars a second, I always just think like I'm passing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people I bet none of them are reading this material, or just a small amount. I wish everybody was, right? So that's sort of my mission in life now, is to connect the right people with the right books and help them change their lives, because we all have so much potential. And these books are such a great way to close the gap between where we are and where we can go. So yeah, just like you said, it makes me sort of sad to think about the fact that most people don't read this stuff.
So what was your favorite kids books? Throw me a couple.
Well, when I was a kid, my dad would read a lot of like fictional series to us. So there was one called Del Toro's Quest that's always sort of stuck out. It's like, the knight with the sword kind of battling. And I love that sort of stuff when I was younger. I also read a lot of Magic Treehouse books, and yeah, I was really into it.
That's so good. That's so great. And if you were to, and I usually would ask this at the end, but since we're talking right about the books, what are you reading now? And what would you most likely gift as far as books? I mean, you have so many, but what are you currently reading, if not like 5 books right now, like me?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm always reading multiple books as well. So here's where I am today, just to give some context. I run a book marketing company and I get paid to read and review books full time. So when I say these numbers, audience, don't feel so bad. But I finish about 2 books a week on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. So I'm reading like 100 books a year, and they're all nonfiction, business, personal development, self-help, philosophy, psychology. That's my bread and butter. So what am I reading right now? I'm going through Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. It's a book that actually a lot of people at Brand Builders Group recommended, and it's all about customer service, customer experience. And although the book takes place in the restaurant industry, it definitely applies to every service-based business out there. I'm also going through 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy for the third time. It's an amazing book. I highly recommend it. And I just finished a cool book called Investing in Short-Term Rentals by an author named Michael Elefante. I'm a little bit in the real estate space too. So that's what I'm reading right now. What about you?
I'm reading, I don't want to finish it, but I'm just because I'm savoring it, is the 33 Strategies of War. I'm also rereading Grit. And I also over here on my table have Mary Oliver's Devotions Poetry, because nothing makes me out of a slump than reading poetry and how she communicates about nature. It always makes me just brings me
Yeah.
back
Oh, I
to,
love it. Well,
yeah.
I'll tell you what, I haven't read any of those three, although the first one you mentioned, Robert Greene was one of my early podcast gets. Yeah, I love it. And I interviewed him about the 48 Laws of Power, and he's been somebody I want to reach out to again. So maybe I'll have to check out that book and get him on my show again.
It is a sick, sick book. I mean, I read all of them, but for some reason, this one, it really teaches about human nature. And I think what I love about it, and I'd love your take on this, because I coach in my business, guys, and I think that much of my why, like what I do is based on my conviction to support men, high achievers, people of excellence on the path to break through psychological limitation, to live within excellence so that we can serve at a higher level. And that's in honor of my son, Will, obviously. And so I'm curious about your take on the fortitude it requires to succeed, because in our world we hear a lot about resiliency, right? And you were an athlete, and so a lot of our adaptation is like, hey, I'm resilient. But how do you feel that fortitude or grit has played in your success?
My thoughts on this subject continue to change, and they get updated over time as I consume more information and as I experience more as a business owner and as a husband and soon to be dad and all of those things, right? A friend, a son, all of it. Here's where I am today. I think about it through the lens of this spectrum of like discipline and willpower on one end, and strategy and like sort of like the stable nature, like the confidence and self-assurance to know you can handle anything. I almost think they're like two opposite ends of a spectrum. And the more willpower and like grit you need to get through something, it probably means you have a poor strategy. So although I've had a lot of times in endurance sports or in business or in life where it's just like everything is going crazy and you need to make it through somehow, some way, as Viktor Frankl would say, or Nietzsche, he who has a strong enough why can bear almost any how. I agree with that. I've had tough times, but today I'm in a world where I don't experience a lot of it, and I don't have to exercise willpower very often because I've set it up. I spent the last 10 years building the infrastructure, building sort of the mindfulness and the headspace. I expect difficulty as part of the process, so it doesn't surprise me. And anyway, it's a different answer maybe to that question than you would normally get, but I don't have to rely on those things other than when I'm in the cold plunge anymore.
I know it's so brutal. And
Yeah.
yet, it's like life is this, right? Approaching you put in the work and had the willpower and grit and determination to get where you are, right? And you've reached and attained a place of mastery. What drives you forward in your success path to excellence?
I heard a podcast almost 2 years ago between Tim Ferriss, the author of a ton of amazing books, including The 4 Hour Work Week, which is one of my favorites, and James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. And Tim asked James, when you walk into each year, what's the New Year's resolution process look like for you? And James said something that will never sort of get out of my brain, which is this question of like, what are you optimizing for? And what I've realized over time is that what drives me is enjoying the present moment. It's savoring my life. It's getting the most out of right now. Now, that doesn't mean that I sit back and I just kind of like watch TV all day or anything like that, because for me, progress helps create joy in the present moment. So I'm always aiming for something. I always have all of the goals. I'm always pushing to grow my business and improve my relationships and improve my health and my connection to God and all of that stuff. Don't get me wrong. But what drives me today is more of the same. It's like, I love the life that I have. I get so much joy out of it. Thank God I'm in a phase where I've been through a lot of the difficult stuff and things are stable. And my primary goal is to keep that going for as long as I can, because I feel like most people don't ever achieve that. It's not
Mm.
work-life balance. It's just, it's flow. You know what I
It
mean?
is. I
And
do. I
yeah,
love that. And my first pillar is in the book that I wrote that I'm finishing up is agility mindset is balance is bullshit. Like ultimately, it's not our greatness where you are didn't happen from you living a balanced life.
right.
It was a life that was generated from a drive to have a lifestyle. But and yet at the same time, if someone followed you around for a day, what would they say?
Yeah, they'd be like, "Wow, you're doing a lot." And I hear it's so funny. I hear that from friends and family a lot. Hey, calm down. You're already doing so much. I'm like, no, I'm not, right? Because you could become familiar with anything. And so I guess the lifestyle that I have today, I have all the crazy biohacking routines that people think are crazy. I have a loaded work schedule that starts at 10 and ends at 6, and I'm booked solid every day of the week. But to me, I love every aspect of it. I've automated, delegated, or eliminated anything that I don't really love to do to the rest of my team.
It's so good. And what an inspiration. And I love that. And I just want to make sure the viewers and listeners know if you followed him for the day, I can guarantee you'd be panting. So how have you been able to quell or not let the influence of others in society or even people who love you tell you, oh, you're doing too much. Why don't you just slow down? What is the driver that keeps you going? And what would you advise people to ask themselves or to set that in? Because you have a standard, right? And your standard is where you are now. And that standard where you are right now is not as very not attainable at so far for so many people. People would live to have your life. But where is the place that you go in order to keep driving forward, even when the people around you are saying, just relax, enjoy yourself?
I will answer that in 1 second. I do want to state after my last answer and thinking it through and hearing myself say it that I do want to highlight, I still have difficult things going on and like I'm still pursuing and crushing whatever. I just have a positive mindset around all of it. So I don't want to come off as like, oh, look at me, I have the perfect life. Like not true, but I have achieved a semblance of like present joy that I think a lot of people would love to have. And I love teaching people how to get there. So to answer your
That's so
question,
perfect. I love that. Did you hear that, everyone? He's achieved a semblance of joy that he wishes to share with others. And therefore, here we are in this conversation. So,
yes.
right on. Thank you so much for that.
So to answer your question directly, like where do I go in my head to sort of justify everything? I'd love to tell you a quick story. Last year, my wife and I were on our honeymoon and we were bouncing around a few different countries in Europe, and we ended up in this beautiful place, Dubrovnik, Croatia. Dubrovnik is a small little Mediterranean city. It has 60,000 people. And we were not in Dubrovnik. We were outside of it in this little beach village. I don't know what the population is, but let's say it was 1,000 people. So one night she sees this bar on the other side of kind of like this lagoon on the ocean. And we walked over to it. And on the way, we saw this beautiful restaurant, tons of people eating, a lot of amazing energy. And she said, after we go get drinks on the way back, let's stop and make reservations for tomorrow night. I want to eat here. It looks beautiful. And so we go, we have a few drinks. We probably stayed later than we should have. And on the walk back, lo and behold, it's closed. It's all boarded up. There's nobody there anymore. She's all bummed out that we can't make the reservations, but I'm in like recently married husband mode. I'm like, let me just open the door and see if there's somebody in the back that can help us out. So I open the door to this place and there's somebody in the back sort of putting away silverware, cleaning up. And I said, excuse me, I'm on my honeymoon. My wife and I saw how beautiful this restaurant is. I'd love to make a reservation for tomorrow night. Can you help me? And this guy turns around and he looks at me and he says, yes, by the way, I'm a huge fan. And I was like, a huge fan of what? Like, and I get goosebumps every single time I think about this story. And that's my why. So I said, a huge fan of what? And he says, BookThinkers, your company, your podcast, all of your book recommendations. I'm a huge fan. Now I'm on the other side of the world in this tiny little beach village outside of Dubrovnik, Croatia. And this guy who's originally from Romania is working summers, kind of getting by, and he's a huge fan. And I was so in shock that I was like, prove it. And he starts going into all these little intricate details that he heard on Instagram stories from 3 years ago or in podcasts from 2 years ago, like all of this insane detail. And he was so grateful and thankful that I was able to introduce him to a lot of this content. He shared all of his goals and dreams and the progresses he's made. So we went back the next night. We got dinner with him. It was an amazing experience. He surprised us by covering the tab. I went home and I had his favorite author, MJ DeMarco, sign a bunch of books and ship them to Croatia. Like, it was the best experience ever. That's why I do what I do. It's because you can have a positive impact on other people. You can help them get closer to the life of their dreams. And that's what I'm able to do by connecting people with the right resources in books and teaching them how to get the most out of each book they read. And so, yeah, like it brings me joy to do the work that I do every single day. And even if I had $1 billion dumped on my lap tomorrow, I would do most of the same stuff I'm doing today. I'd have the same morning routines. I'd get up at the same time. I would do a lot of the same work, right? Because I love it. You know what I mean?
Right. And so when people are like, oh my gosh, like Nick, you do so much, or you're so positive, like that whole thing, because I'm asking you this for me too, because I have similar vibe as you. It's like, I work really hard and I love what I do. I work really hard. I love what I do. If someone followed me, they'd be like, what the app, it's that same kind of thing, but I love what I do. And so how do we bring people into this, awaken people to the magic of pushing through hard things? Because this really is the work, Nick. It's like step into the work to experience the magic of a level of joy that's in the process of creation, of partnership, and awakening others to who they are. I'm just every single day it's marched towards helping people create a bigger path into that awareness.
Well, I'll say one of my favorite book recommendations for people who are just starting out is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. It basically states that small steps in the right direction, repeated over a long period of time, will lead to this disproportionately positive outcome. It's the hockey stick exponential growth curve we're all looking for. And so when I think about Instagram, for instance, we do 1 million impressions a month. It's the same level of effort that back when I had like 5 impressions a month. I was putting out value into the world, documenting what I was experiencing, trying to help every single person that I came across. I still do that today, except now each post has so much more impact because I've been doing it for so long. So whether it's an improvement you want to make in your health or in your relationships or in your spirituality or in your business, like it's the small little steps over a long period of time that will get you there. And you can become familiar with anything like we talked about earlier. So when I first started out, I couldn't bear the same level of energy or workload that I have today, but I continue to iterate and move and shift and update and learn. And now I'm in this beautiful spot today. There's one other book recommendation that I'll give everyone. It's called Built to Serve by Evan Carmichael. And I read a lot of books on like your why or your purpose prior to this one, and they never really did anything for me. But this book had a bunch of exercises that seemed kind of goofy. Who's your favorite middle school teacher and why? What's your favorite movie and who's the main character and why? And you list out all this stuff. And then it fits into this formula that the author has called your who, why, how. And I realized for me that my who is progress. And there's a little credo attached to that. If I make progress in my health, my wealth, my relationships, or I help somebody else make progress in their health, their wealth, their relationships, then I sleep well at night. That's my who. That's my one word. Why? Because books changed my life. And as Rory always says to us at BBG, like you are best positioned to serve the person you once were. So my who is progress. Why? Because books changed my life and I know they can change everybody else's life. And how do I do that? I do that through my business book thinkers. I do it through my podcast. I do it through supporting authors. I do it through my everyday interactions. I try to emulate gratitude and joy and things like that. And that framework helped me for really the first time to think, why am I doing this stuff? It's because, oh, books changed my life and books can help you change your life. And now it makes sense. And like, sounds so obvious now with hindsight, but I didn't know that at the time. And I think that once you can articulate why you do what you do, then it makes it so much easier for other people to collaborate with you and for other people to support your mission and to get help by you, to get helped by you. So those are a couple of books that I'd recommend for anybody that just doesn't know, like they're listening to this because they're not really sure what to do next.
I think that it's almost a difficult process. And I know many famous people have built their platform is like knowing your why. That for me isn't where I start. It's like, and I agree with you that it's like, it's who or it's a what, but why is something that you discover along the way, right? And for you, it's like books represent these things. Books are a metaphor in many ways, right? For a transformed life.
Yes.
And I fully appreciate that share. That's huge. So would you mind sharing your favorite failure?
Yes, I would not mind. Or no, I would not mind. um, when I was graduating college and I was just starting my business, BookThinkers, I had this idea that I wanted to build a mobile app that can help people retain and implement more from the books they're reading by capturing your favorite takeaways and then essentially reiterating them to you. And I also wanted to build a whole social platform around a feed where you could see what books your friends were finishing, what their thoughts were, you could comment on it, etc. So I got two of my friends to go in on this with me. We spent tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours of our time outsourcing the build of this mobile app, and it totally failed. I mean, it never made a dollar. We never found product market fit. The agency we delegated everything to went out of business without the product finished. And that was tough. I mean, that was a ton of money and a ton of time as a recent college graduate who didn't have two pennies to rub together.
Mm.
And, obviously now looking back, it was an amazing learning experience, but it was really deflating for a long time to have your hopes and dreams just totally crushed by like a series of chaotic events. And anyway, that's one of my favorites right there.
That's so, yeah, it's powerful, right? It's humbling. It's so humbling to take a hit, a public hit. And in this recent article that came out, a recent study regards to the epidemic of loneliness, and it was geared towards more towards like how parents are struggling now. It's parents are struggling equally to people that are just lonely. What is your uh because we live in this epidemic of loneliness, what's the cure for this?
Hmm, big question. I read a Harvard study that verifies everything that you talked about. It's one of the longest running studies out there. They were looking at what creates happiness and fulfillment for people, and they measured a ton of variables like status and education level and money in the bank, et cetera. And none of those were the driving factor. It was community, which is sort of the opposite of loneliness. And so I pay a lot of attention to community. I'll give a couple of examples for things that I do to foster community, and then maybe I'll take a stab at answering your question a little bit more directly. Um, Now that I'm 30, right? I'm past that age where I'm going out to bars with college friends or high school friends. Like I'm past that. Everybody's starting to have families and sort of separate. And so I really go out of my way to get everybody together as often as I can so that I don't let those relationships slip. I don't think relationships have to be 50-50. I think if you're
Mm.
somebody who's looking to create more community in your life, those relationships might be 100-0. You might have to do all the outreach for a while. And so every time my wife and I experience something, an engagement party, a party at home for our wedding that for people that couldn't travel to it, a gender reveal for our baby, like all of these little goofy things, have the party, reach out to people you haven't seen in years, invite them over, catch up. Like I'm there's so many people in my life that I consider friends that haven't hit me up in a long time, but I consistently reach out to them. In a couple of months, I'm doing another Spartan race. Talk about it, grit and endurance. And I have 23 of my friends joining me for it. And some of these people I haven't seen in a while, but I reach out and I ask. I don't mind if they say, no, I'm too busy, or if the relationship fades on their side and they don't want to hang out. Totally fine. But if you want community, you should put in the effort to have community. So those are some of the things that I look for and that I do. Um, I think, how do you solve loneliness? Get involved with other people's communities instead of creating your own is a really fast way to get there. For instance, BookThinkers, my reading community, we have over 180,000 followers on Instagram. And the comment section on some of those posts, they go crazy with people meeting each other and relationships happening in the DMs. Like, it sounds goofy, but you can build and foster relationships with like-minded people through places like Instagram or at Brand Builders Group, for instance. So get involved, put a little bit more effort in your outbound relationship outreach. And I think you'll find that community is not too far away.
I love that. That's so good. Well, just being the fact that you're a man and you're 30 years old, and I'm sure you have friends that have been more challenged in their mental health. And so, what would you recommend for those people that really don't feel like they have the courage or the willingness to reach out to community? They say that the number one, we use the expression self care a lot, and women kind of coin the term. It's like, oh, what do you get, a manicure, pedicure, or whatever? But for men's, the number one reason or number one way men can self care is to be in community. That is the number one thing that helps men with not feeling lonely. It's the number one thing for self care. But
Yeah,
it's a big issue.
it is a really big issue. I'd say a couple of different things. Number one, reading a book is a very private process for a lot of people. You can read about mental health as a man in the privacy of your own home. Nobody's there to judge you. The book doesn't know you're reading it. Uh, and when the Amazon package shows up, it's discreet. So start there. Read books about mental health. There are so many amazing resources out there written by men for men. And I think that if you read iconic biographies of some of today's like stars in the social media space, like David Goggins, for instance, you'll see a lot of people like that who look really hard on the exterior, running 240 miles in the desert or whatever. they struggle with their mental health too. And once it becomes normalized, once you realize that even a lot of the people you look up to, when they are given the chance to write about it, they'll be vulnerable and express the problems that they've had. It makes you feel like, okay, you know what? Other people have overcome this. That means there's a path for me to overcome this too. As far as like outreach to community, I think if you don't want to reach out to individual people, I play basketball twice a week with a group of guys. I didn't know most of them before I joined, and now they're like great friends of mine. And I don't see them outside of basketball, but twice a week I get to see these two different groups. And when you exercise, you feel better. The exercise creates endorphins that are released that make your brain feel more positive. It's always great when you're in shape. And when you do hard things like play 3 hours of basketball with a group of guys, you form a sense of camaraderie. So whether it's basketball or flag football or a soccer league or volleyball, there are all these great like rec websites that you can just sign up for sports on. So just type in a quick Google search, rec football or basketball in a city near me and sign up and just go meet people. You don't have to shake hands and kiss babies and say hi. You can just participate and it'll happen over time.
That's so good. I love that. It makes me think about this. I don't know what country they established it, but it was called like the man shed or something like that. It was just like a place where guys could go build stuff, and go into a shed, and there were tools. And because the studies show, and to be honest with you, I think it gets a bad rap. It's like, particularly because I do coach men, is that men, a lot of time intimacy is built parallel playing. It's like they watch football this way. They're playing in the sandbox this way. They're playing in sport this way. Does that mean it's less powerful or less intimate? I do not think so, because there is this hierarchy of what is intimacy. For men, like this level of intimacy for most men is intense, because it's either I'm going to have sex with this person or I'm going to fight this person. By instinct, that's men. So why would we force men to have this level of intimacy? And we're doing it in Zoom because it's adapted. And I believe Zoom has helped with intimacy in a lot of ways, because we're here facing each other. I mean, you have to tune in. It's like, you can't be on your phone or like doodling, or, you have to pay attention to the person in front of you. But I believe that it's so important. And thank you so much. You basically I wrote out a list of 5 things. And I'll be sharing that in the notes, about ways that we can validate the differences to way men build intimacy, and that it's not less than that men build intimacy next to each other versus full on facing each other, that it's beautiful and it's to be honored and respected as a really healthy way to be connected.
Yeah, and you know what, to touch on that point through that lens a little bit more, I have some friends now that I've built relationships with where we can sit down over dinner and talk for a couple of hours about intimate things. But
Mm-hmm.
I also have relationships that are equally as valuable with people who don't share the same level of interest in articulating how they feel, but we play sports together, whether it's football or basketball, or they'll do endurance sports with me or whatever the case is, or they'll invest in a real estate property with me or whatever, read the same book. And we don't talk about it as much, but the relationship is just as valuable. And so you're
Love
totally
it.
right. You can have intimacy in different ways. It doesn't just need to be like, let me spill my guts out on
Oh,
video.
thank God. And I think that's kind of weird, Nick, is I think that that's why I'm so different than most women, is because I believe that relationships can be all very, very different. But with women in general, women's friendship has almost like this checklist of like how you have to share things that are like maybe not really helpful to building, I believe, a deeper, intimate friendship and relationship. So I think that in a lot of ways, just what you shared, so powerful. And I love it that you move into the acceptances relationships as being all different ways, and that we just show up and be present is really the superpower and the gift. Oh man, Nick, you dropped some serious bombs. I literally took so many notes, and I'm so weirdly strategic. I actually numbered them. So I'll actually have to type them out for you, because it's another book. Either that or I'll send you the transcript. But
Love it.
just want to say thank you so much. What would you like, in parting, what would you like to share with the audience as your golden gems, even though you've given me 40 minutes of it already?
I'll say this. There is a book to solve every single problem that we deal with as human beings. A lot of times we think our situation is unique to us, and we need to swallow a little bit of humble pie every once in a while and realize that there have been billions of people who have lived on this beautiful planet. And millions of them have shared similar struggles, and they've documented how they overcame those struggles in the form of books. And it sounds goofy, but like somebody like Steve Jobs, there are amazing biographies written sort of with him, that document every single decision he made and all of his greatest life lessons. And you can read that, and then you can have sort of your own little mentor that you can ask questions to, and you can filter through his decision making, right? And he might be able to teach you about business and innovation. And then you can read about Arnold Schwarzenegger if you want to learn about bodybuilding and visualization. And then you can read about Vanessa Van Edwards if you want to learn about charismatic communication. And it's like all of these things are available for $20 in a few hours of your time. And so read the books. They're available, they're accessible, and they will help you. And the last thing that I'll say about this too is that if you have a problem that you deal with on a daily basis, right? It happens every single day and it causes pain. Over the next 30 years, you'll experience that pain 11,000 more times, right? 30 times 365. Or you could spend $20, buy and read a book, solve the problem, and never deal with it again. And so that's how I view my reading process is what skill do I want to acquire? What problem do I want to solve? What area of life am I curious of learning more about? And then I do the thing. I just read. That's all. It's not that difficult. So life doesn't have to be so hard. Just read the books.
I love that. It's so good. You dropping the bomb. I interviewed someone from Brand Builders this morning, and he said, leverage when you have challenges, leverage the problem, leverage what you learned. And I was like, oh, I like that. We're going to leverage it, aren't we, Nick?
Yeah, I love
Leverage
that
your
too.
knowledge,
Yeah.
leverage it. I just think that that's so applicable to everything in life. Nick, thank you so much. I'm super honored and grateful that you've been part of Master Your Life, and may your success continue to blossom and affect the millions of people to which you're here to serve. And blessings to you on the birthing of your new family, and may all be well and happy and healthy for you.
Thank you so much. And I'll add this for anybody that's made it this far. Leave this show a review. As content creators, as a podcast host, Kate puts out so much value. Interviewing people like this takes prep work and time and editing and distribution. And show some love. Reach out, let her know how the podcast has positively impacted you. Rate it, review it, share it with somebody that could benefit from it, because all of those things just help make the world go round in a better and more efficient way.
Right on. I appreciate you. Well, thank you so much. And until next time, remember, leverage all of your knowledge. And you have a friend in a book, you have a teacher in a book, you have it all in a book. And take good care. Appreciate y'all.